In construction, we use our hands constantly. The use of your hands is essential for just about every construction activity. Your hands enable you to make a living. Your hands are irreplaceable. Keeping your hands safe goes beyond just putting on gloves. It involves identifying critical hazards, using sound judgment, correctly placing your hands when working, and following a myriad of established safe work practices for the use of tools, equipment, and chemicals. An interesting point to consider is that close to 30% of those who experienced a hand injury on the job were actually wearing gloves. Unfortunately, their gloves were likely inadequate, damaged, or simply the wrong type of control for that particular hazard. Let's now move on to the second part of this session to discuss the causes of hand and finger injuries. Hand injuries can be divided into 5 general categories: lacerations and cuts, fractures and dislocations, soft tissue injuries and amputations, burns, and high-pressure injuries such as water, grease injection, and paint gun injuries. Hand and finger injuries can happen when your hands are caught between objects or in pinch points, while using hand tools, power tools, or when they make contact with sharp objects, hot surfaces, or chemicals. You have to admit that we often put our hands into harm's way or into the line of fire without thinking about what could go wrong. Some of the most severe injuries, those that result in broken hands and amputations, involve pinch points. Things are moving. We reach out and put our hands in the line of fire, or where they can get caught. We don't think ahead of time. What could go wrong? We just reach out. We need to think ahead of time about how we're going to accomplish our task without putting our hands where we could lose them. There are many common situations that result in crushed or broken bones in hands and fingers. Here are some common examples: ironworkers connecting structural steel, pipe fitters receiving pipes being lifted, handling a precast panel, laborers moving heavy boards or steel plate, carpenters setting or stripping formwork, scaffolding erectors moving poles, riggers setting a loaded pallet on dunnage. In addition to pinch points, the careless use of tools causes many hand and finger injuries. Most of these are caused by putting our hands into the line of fire. Examples include loss of control of a grinder, a chop saw having your hand too close to the blade, screwdriver gouges a palm, hands cut by a knife, not cutting away from your body, hammer hits a thumb, and finger lacerated by a drill bit. There are also obvious risks of brushing up against sharp objects on a construction site. Examples include burrs on a pipe or handrail, broken glass, steel studs and track, sheet metal, wood splinters, cable with broken wires, nail points, saw blades, and drill bits. Burns from hot surfaces can also cause hand and finger injuries. Examples include recent welds which are still hot, welding slag, solder, pipes in process areas, salamander heaters, electrical wiring, surfaces that are hot from friction, tiger torches. Burns can be prevented through the use of engineering controls and wearing the proper gloves. Think before you reach out and touch something without protection. On some of our jobs, we use chemicals that can burn your skin. Examples include acids and bases, paints and solvents, concrete, epoxy and other glues, gasoline and diesel, cleaning compounds, and processed chemicals. Preparing for safe work includes completing the PSI and reviewing the potential hazards of the work to be done. Before you use chemicals, review the safety data sheet to confirm that you have the proper type of gloves and protective equipment to protect yourself from the chemical hazards. In this part, we'll start to examine how to prevent hand and finger injuries. Click on the neck. No matter what the actual mechanism of injury was, one common underlying theme in just about every one of our hand and finger injuries is simply the placement of the hand and fingers. It's crazy, but we instinctively put our hands where they can get hurt. We touch things that are hot to see if they're hot. We grab onto things that are clearly sharp to see how sharp they are. It just doesn't make sense. Added to that problem is that our minds wander. We start thinking work tasks, personal issues, or simply other stuff that's more interesting. If we're going to keep our hands and fingers out of harm's way, we have to pay attention to what we're doing. The work you do can be hazardous. Attention to the task is essential. This is why you must plan to do the task using a method that keeps your hands out of harm's way. Don't rely on you or other employees to keep their hands clear of the hazard. As we like you know, our pre-job safety instruction, or PSI program, is the cornerstone of our operations. Make sure you identify and mitigate hand and finger injuries in your PSI. Imagine life without the use of your hands. Suddenly, basic tasks in the workplace and at home become major obstacles. Clearly, our hands are vital tools for performing a myriad of essential life and work functions. Yet both the national and company data suggest that too many people are putting their hands at risk and paying a steep price. Remember these basic rules to prevent injuries to your hands and fingers. First, complete a PSI with the risk of pinch points and sharp objects in mind. Avoid job site distractions. Keep your mind on your task and keep your eyes on your task. And select the best hazard. Above all, know where your hands and fingers are and keep them out of harm's way. Use gloves where appropriate. Gloves should not be used when working around rotating machines or in areas where the glove fabric could become entangled and endanger your hand. Never use defective or damaged tools, and always make sure your tool is properly guarded and used for its intended purpose. When cutting or trimming material, use shears or specialized cutting tools when possible, not knives. Never use a box knife that has a fixed blade. Always use one with a spring-loaded blade that is held out by the pressure of your thumb. Always place the item to be trimmed on a firm surface. Do not place the items in your lap or hold it in your hand. Keep your cutting tools sharp. Sharp blades require less operating hand pressure and therefore are less likely to result in slippage and stray cutting. Always cut away from your body, including your other hand and thumb. You are far less likely to be injured by a stray cutting action if you follow this simple rule. Before you complete the module, click on the link